Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. And today we've got a new pack that's just come out. Sweetener luckily gave it to me a little bit early, but Sweetener has really made an awesome pack called the Ambers of Africa. So this has got a bunch of dinosaurs and lagoon and pterosaurs, all sorts of those kind of animals from the Africa. So that includes a really cool, interesting bunch of animals that we'll get into. So we're going to be starting off today. We've got a really cool animal here. We've got Ludasaurus, a really, really awesome animal. Really excited to get stuck into this one. So here's a really cool animal, Ludasaurus. So let's have a look at you while you're walking out there. So Ludasaurus is an iguanodontian. It's very unusual and quite massive, as we'll get into. Comes from the El Haz Formation in Niger. Its name, Ludasaurus, means heavy lizard, and its scientific name is Ludasaurus enterensis. And this guy comes from the early Cretaceous, about 112 million years ago, and was discovered in 1965, where the holotype was discovered, which is a nearly complete adult specimen, and was really like weird proportions. People are like, oh, this is weird. And then, however, it was described in Sola Chapel's PhD thesis in 1988 under the name Gravisaurus tintinerus, but it was never published, and the next time it was published was by an American paleontologist, Dave Russell, who gave it the description of Ludasaurus enterus, which means the heavy lizard, which refers to their very heavy fossil and heavy body as well. And enterus is Latin for sandy because it was found in a desert. And there's also a dentary fragment of the species and stuff like that. But mainly the holotype is a nearly complete specimen. But in terms of its description, this is a really, really interesting animal. It's very atypical for a lot of dinosaurs. So it has, especially like ornithopods, it's got a kind of small skull, quite a long neck, especially for a iguanodontian. This rotund body here, and powerful forelimbs and stuff as well. They actually quite resemble that of a ground sloth, and they've been compared to that a lot. And also the metacarpals, or the wrist bones, are fused together in a large block. And the thumb spike, as you can see, is quite enormous. And this would have allowed the hand to function almost like a ball and chain flannel. It was probably used to defend or fight for females, things like that, which is really, really interesting. And really, really huge animal as well. The estimated length would be about 9 meters long for this animal, or about 30 feet long, and about 2 meters tall at the hip, or about 6'7" at the hip. And the length of the ribs, judging it would have been at least the stomach and the feet would be only 70 centimeters or so off the ground, which is really interesting. And based on the circumference of the limbs, the holotype was estimated to be quite large. The holotype is estimated to be about, we'll have a look at you while you're on the side there, about 5 tons or 5.5 tons, or about 12,000 pounds, which is actually very, very heavy for a comparable size ornithopod. And for comparison, a iguanodon, which was about 10 or 11 meters, or about 36 to 33 feet long, would have weighed about 2.5 tons. So it's very, very huge. And I believe to just be this general rotund proportions. Along with the limbs, they have this quite rotund limbs as well, as you can see here. And compared to things like Camptosaurus, its unguals are flatter as well, and they have somewhat almost like a ceratopsian-like pelvis, which is really, really interesting. And they have a couple adaptations that kind of allow it to be that slightly bigger size, which is really interesting. In terms of who it's related to, it was kind of initially considered a derived iguanodontian, or intermediate between iguanodontians and hadrosaurs. But it shows that actually may be a little bit more basal than that. They're in a group within the Ankylopalexia, in a group called Styrosternia, which includes Ludasaurus. But they're intermediate between the Iguanodontia. So they're related to animals such as Jabasaurus and Awenodon, so kind of a really, really early group, but still really, really interesting. And in terms of their ecology, in 2007, Thomas Holtz actually suggested that Ludasaurus may have been the dinosaur equivalent of a hippo. And there's actually a lot of evidence to support this, considering it would have been heavy, stocky body as well. And it kind of goes no further than that, but it's a cool interpretation of their ecology. But they could have been quite fast runners if they needed to, but generally slow moving, kind of like hippos believed to be. But generally, iguanodontids are thought to be primarily bipeds or facultatively bipeds, but because of Ludasaurus' large size, it's believed to be mostly quadrupedal. And it has that really interesting like body and really different from most other iguanodontians. And it almost like more resembles like an ankylosaur or a ground sloth, where they've been compared to quite a lot. And in terms of its habitat, this guy's recovered from the Erlhaus Formation, and it has lots of famous dinosaurs that you guys know and love that are already in the game, such as Tyrannosaurus, Suchomimus, and other things such as Isarosaurus, Nigersaurus, Eocarchara, Cryptops, Sarcosuchus is also from that formation. And it seems about this time, it was around the early Cretaceous, about 112 million years ago, they would have had cross-bedded fluvial sandstones, which means sand dunes, and also some widespread forests as well. So very interesting habitat, and I think it came out rather nicely. One thing I really liked that Sweetener did as well, it added this like feather coat or feather mane going on the animal, which actually does make sense because we do have ornithopods or ornithischians with feathers, such as Calindrodromius, Psittacosaurus, and Tianulong, for example. So we do have some bird-hipped dinosaurs with feathers, so it came out rather nicely. So let them walk off and do their thing. Really came up nicely. So now they're just walking over to the corner there and not being helpful. But next one here, we have got a big sauropod. I know everyone loves the sauropods. We have got Jobaria. Have a look at these wonderful fellows here. You can see this is Jobaria. Really, really awesome animal. So, Jobaria is or Tigonensis is his name. So these guys were a sauropod dinosaur that lives in what is now Niger and lived during the Middle Jurassic period between the 164 and 161 million years ago, and is the only valid sauropod known from the Tenorian, where it was discovered in 1997. So during the fall of 1997, Paul Sereno, who's a really great paleontologist, I actually got to meet him a while ago. He's a really cool guy. He was found in the mass death site in the Tenorian Formation in Niger. And is actually really, really well known, with over 95% of its skeleton preserved. It's one of the most complete sauropods known, so you have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. And the genus is named after the local mythical giant beast Jabar, and it's also bones of some theories believed to be the fossils of this kind of beast. And the specific name Tigardensis comes from the cliffs of Tigadi, which is the site where it was discovered. And the original settlements were thought to be from the early Cretaceous period, from about like 132 million years ago, the Birmanian or the Hadverian. But however, they'd had a better interpretation and looked at the sediments, and actually most likely these guys would come from the Middle Jurassic, or the Bathonian or the Oxfordian, so about 167 to 161 million years ago. So they thought it was like 30 million years older than it was, younger than it was. But that's cool. But in terms of its phylogeny, we really don't know where it's placed. It's got a lot of basal features. It's been interpreted as kind of a basal machinarian, so related to brachiosaurs and titanosaurs. But as you can kind of see, it almost looks like Camarasaurus in a lot of ways. Or a non-neosauropod urosauropod, so it's basal to that clade of those later sauropods, but we don't really know too much. But these guys are a primitive sauropod, or a basal sauropod is probably a better way to put it. And we've got about 18 meters long and estimated to weigh about 18.2 meters long and weighed about 22 tons. And in 2016, it was given a smaller estimate, though, about 16 meters long and about 16 tons, or 52 feet long. But its backbone was actually tall and simple compared to a lot of the later diplodocids, for example. And it may have been able to rear on their hind limbs. It's actually been concluded after comparing the ratios of the humerus and the femur jabaria with extant elephants, which can raise on their back legs. So it's very likely that these guys would have supported their weight on their hind limbs rather than their forelimbs, so they're able to kind of rear up and do their own thing, which is really, really cool. And you can see its head is very similar to that of Camarasaurus, but it's slightly elongated. And one thing I've got to mention, this reminds me a lot of the Europasaurus that what was it? Joshua made for his book, and I really do love that coloration. It's translated really well onto Jabaria. I think Sweeten has done a really great job of bringing this animal into Jurassic World Evolution. Really, really awesome. So let him go off and do his thing. So yeah, now we're moving on to another. We're moving on to all the way over to the aviary. So all the way over here, we got ourselves we got Sorakopteryx, which is a really cool animal. We'll get looking into that. So here we are. This is. Let's see if we can get a good. Is that just the one? Huh. Weird. Not usually just the one, but we'll have a look at there anyway. Oh wait, no. Here it is. There's the other one. This is Sorakopteryx. These guys are a type of ammonogid pterodactyloid from the Middle Cretaceous. So they're from about the Albian Cinnamanian from about 105 million years ago, and they're found in sediments from modern-day Morocco. And this genus was described in 1999 by Brian Marder and Alex Kindler, I believe you say that. And the name is Sorakopteryx, is the rings of the Sirocco, which refers to the warm areas of Africa, North Africa, where they're found. And pterosaur, pteryx, means wing, so it's basically wing of the Sirocco, which is really cool. It's not that well known. It's really only known from front part of the jaw and with teeth, and the holotype is found in the Iraraka region in Morocco, southeastern Morocco, and a layer of ridge sandstone that comes from the Albanian to the Centimanian. There are some people that have compared it to like Colibrinchus and also Tropicnathus, though they're slightly different. Some people believe they are actually a synonym or the same species or same animal as Colibrinchus, which is a really interesting pterosaur, which is really, really cool. And the wingspan has been estimated to be about 4 or 5 meters long, so about 13 to 16 feet. So a decent-sized pterosaur, kind of that mid-size. And it was likely a specialized glider, very similar ecology to most other species of Colibrinchus and other species of Ambrugid pterosaurs. This is guys in ornithochirids, so they're related to animals such as Ornithochirus. And would have been feeding off fish and stuff that swam near the surface, potentially even diving for them. In terms of its phylogeny, most recent phylogeny consider it sister to Tropicnathus and Pterodraca and Mythguria, so very closely related to those guys, though there have been considered more closely related to things like Ornithochirus, things like that. So in that kind of group, very interesting animal. I really do think these guys are awesome, and I love how the teeth come out. The only thing I would say wrong is that it should be covered in pycnofibers, but we can see there's some pycnofibers here. Sweetener did a really great job of adding some feathers to things, and I think it's come out rather nicely. Really, really cool animals, so let them go off and do their thing. So next up, we have got, going to lagoons. We're going to finish off with the lagoons. We have got Onchoprictus here. There's a really, really cool animal we got going on here. So Onchoprictus is a really, really cool animal. Onchoprictus, they say that. These guys are kind of called saw skates. They convergently evolve their kind of long rostrum as the sawfish, so they're not that closely related, but they convergently evolved them, which is a really cool trait that they have. These guys come from the Cretaceous of North Africa, Europe, and North America, and their name comes from the Greek barb sawfish, so bob saw, or barb saw, as I technically say it. They contain two valid species, Nubia and Dodunki. and they first appeared around the Bermanian stage, around the Campanian, making it one of the longest and oldest and longest living genera of the group. And their size estimates, they are estimated to be, these estimates range from like 8 meters long to 4 meters long, but there have been estimates that a lot of them are really oversized. They may only be like a couple meters long. But it's kind of with fish, scaling is always a drama, especially with fish that are cartilaginous, which is not good. But they have this long rostrum with these large dentaries, very similar to saw sharks and sawfish. And this feature is actually closely evolved, and its closely living relative is actually skates, which is really cool. And there's also isolated things like rostra, jaws, oral tissue vertebrae have been found. This guy was first found in 1905 from fragmentary remains, and there have been oral teeth from the Baharaha Formation in Egypt, which were named Squadatina by Stromer in 1927, but then were renamed into Onchopristics, which is pretty cool. And there was a second species found in America, around Texas, and was described by Dunkey, and was probably not that distinct, though they could probably be the same. And rostral dentaries from New Zealand also showed that there was another species of sawfish from that area, but it got its own genus and name species, Australopithecus whifferi, so named after Joan Whiffen, the dragon lady, which has a really cool story that we might get into another time. Yeah, really, really cool animal. It's kind of sad that this guy is kind of relegated to just food for Spinosaurus and most paleo. It's a really, really cool animal, and it's really cool to see this guy in Jurassic World Evolution. Sweetner did a really wonderful job bringing this guy into I was going to say Planet Zoo, but Jurassic World Evolution. Awesome. So next, moving on to another cool lagoon animal. We have got here Zafarasoria. I believe you say that. So this is a really cool animal. This is Zafarasoria. So these guys are an extinct genus of elasmosaurid known from the Oulud Abdon Basin in Morocco. So another one from Morocco, which is really, really cool. This guy is really only known from a holotype, which shows a complete skull and mandible. And this holotype was collected in the JWE area in the upper C3 level of the Upper Cretaceous. So this guy comes from the latest Maastrichtian, so very late animal, and it comes from Morocco. So it was first named by Peggy Vincent and a bunch of other people in 2011, and the type species is Zafarasoria oceanensis, which the generic name comes from Zafafa, so giraffe, so it refers to given to the local population of plesiosaurs found in these areas, so they kind of call them giraffe. So giraffe, lizard, and oceanensis means daughter of the sea. So I think that's a pretty cool little fact about them. Their ecology is not too well known, probably very similar to things like Kypheckia in terms of its general anatomy, but we don't know exactly where they place within Elasmosauridae, but they're definitely elasmosaurid. A really, really cool animal. Really only known from the skull, so you can see that wonderful skull there. Really interesting looking animal. I do like Zafarasoria. Looks really, really awesome. But yeah, Serena did a really wonderful job with that guy. So next we're moving back onto land. We're going to the Tendaguru Formation. Really, really cool formation. We've got Genetia. Let's get a good pick of you while you're standing there. So this is Genetia, as I mentioned. These are a large herbivorous sauropod dinosaur from the Tendaguru Formation of Tanzania. Lived about 155 million years ago. And this animal's got a little bit of history to it. It's quite convoluted. It originally had the name kind of Gigantosaurus robustus, but it was obviously not well used, or Gigantosaurus. But it eventually landed into Tononera, which became irrelevant and became the type species new genus, and Barosaurus as well. But this guy eventually became its own animal, Genesauria robusta, which is really, really interesting. So there's been a number of specimens attributed to it, and the most recent evidence suggests that it could have potentially been in like an early Titanosauridae, which makes it the earliest member of Titanosauria. And it was renamed Genetia to honor Wero Genetia, who studied the vertebrate fauna from the Tentaguru, which is really interesting as well. A number of specimens were formally assigned to Genetia, have been recognized as different genera, such as Tanaguria, and another one is Victorcordia, which is as well. And most recent callistic analyses kind of consider it a non-titanosauriform sauropod, but we really don't know too much about it. Most of the material is kind of like humerus and some other body parts like that. Really, really interesting animal. Its taxonomy is really all over the place, but really, really cool animal. I do quite like this guy. Here you can see it's kind of that more classic interpretation of very Titanosaurid. You got that osteoderms there. One thing I forgot to mention on the other guys, you can see they've got the correct feet. Look at the correct feet they've got. Just that hoof there with the toe claw, and very much that those three claws going that way. So it's really nice to see that. It's kind of an animal that is very taxonomically confusing, but it's kind of cool just because it's from Africa, and it's got some interesting things going on. Actually, one of the older names was Gigantosaurus megalonyx, which was named by Harry Garvestili in 1869, which is very interesting. That's what it originally was, but then it had to be renamed to other things. And I think that's just so wild. It's very interesting. But yeah, I think we'll move on from this guy and let them walk out there. You can see that it's based on the Diplodocus. Really interesting interpretation. Let them walk out and do their thing before we move on to our next animal. So last but certainly not least, we've got another really cool animal from the Tendaguru Formation. Let's see if we can get them to move. Oh, they're doing their social thing, so I can't really do that yet. Let's watch them do that since we haven't talked too much about them. Yeah, it's definitely a dinosaur with a very complex history, which is very interesting. As being originally described as an early titanosaur, now it's considered a non-titanosaurian sauropod, and we really don't know exactly where it placed. So let's see if we can get them to move in. Come on. Like I can release them, but I don't want them to get in the way of these guys. So let's hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Is he going to sleep? Is he stuck there? No. Let's just let them move. Okay, that's good. Okay, now let's release a Lapisaurus. So here's another cool dinosaur. Let's see if we can find one that's... There we are. Perfect. One right there. So this is Elaphosauros. Really, really cool dinosaur. So these guys are a genus of Ceratosaurian theropod that come from the late Jurassic of Tanzania, also from the Tendaguru Formation. So it would have lived with Genetia. So the type specimen was recovered from the Tendaguru Formation in Tanzania around 1910. And estimated to be from about the Cameroonian stage of the Jurassic period, so about 157 to 152 million years ago, and was described and named by the same guy, Weno Janesh, in 1920, and the type species is Elaphosauros barbrio, or bambergi. The genus name comes from the Greek meaning light, elaphos, light to bear, as in light-footed, and which refers to that high running speed potentially it could have in sauros lizards, so basically light-footed lizard. And the specific name comes from the industrialist Paul Bamberg, who supported the Tendaguru expeditions as they went down. So there's kind of some things known from humerus, some vertebrae, pelvic girdle, things like that, and kind of really known what this like as well. And a related animal is believed to be found in the Morrison Formation, but we really don't have enough to really say much about that. But this guy's a really, really interesting animal. So you can see they don't typically look like you think of what of a Ceratosaurus. They've got a long, slender body with a long neck, and what we know is comes from a single, nearly complete skeleton with no skull, and has actually had short-legged, distinctive among theropods for having short legs for its length, and is actually the kind of the lowest-bodied and shallow-chested theropod that Paul had examined. And it got to about the size of 6.2 meters or 20 feet long, about 4.8 feet tall or 1.4 meters at the hip, and about 210 kilograms or about 460 pounds in weight. And this kind of looking at the femur proportions, things like that, they actually share a lot of these proportions with some ornithomimosaurs, which suggests that these guys were quite cursorial, great runners, things like that. And the long tail was a rear downward bend, which actually was maybe by taphonomy and how it was preserved. And a lot of these traits as well argue that these guys may have been against Lapisaurus being a large predator, so feeding on large animals, but actually may have been omnivorous or even potentially herbivorous, and similar to Lemursaurus, which is a very weird dinosaur that I hope we get to cover. In terms of its classification, it was first described as a Silurisaurian, which was a waste bucket taxon for small theropods, so anything small was in there. But recently it's been described in its own group of the Albertosauridae, or Saurodia, and then Albertosaurodia, and then it kind of split off to the Noasauridae, and then these two groups kind of split off to their own two things. It's Elaphosaurinine and Noasaurinine. So Elaphosaurinine includes, of course, Elaphrosaurus and Lemursaurus, which is another really interesting dinosaur, which basically changed diet as it grew up. And then you have the Noasaurine, which includes Noasaurus, Velocicosaurus, and Mexicosaurus, who I actually accidentally pronounced Madagascasaurus in the last video. But really, really cool animal in terms of its relations, and it's in their own kind of distinctive little group. And in terms of its paleobiology and ecology, it seems that these guys were too small to hunt on most animals like sauropods and stegosaurs, but have likely either hunted really small prey, or even such as small ornithopods and things like that. But more recent studies suggest that even it could have been a herbivore or omnivorous, owing to its close relation to Lemursaurus. And because Lemursaurus basically was a predator when it was young and then grew up to be adult, or I think it was vice versa. But a really interesting, like basically changed its niche completely as it grew up. It's so weird. And its also neck was much less flexible than other theropods, so it's another kind of chink against it. And in terms of paleobiology, this guy would have, as I mentioned, lived in the paleo environment of the Tendaguru Formation, which has both like marine and non-marine faunal and floral, both non-marine floral and faunal contents. So basically lots of really interesting animals. And it would have lived with animals such as Giraffa titan, Ostrodocus, Genetia, as you can see right there, they would have lived together. The Crayosaurus, Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus as well, or theropods quite similar to them. The Carcharodontosaurid Vertebrasaurus, Kentrosaurus, and also animals such as Pterodactylus and Rhamphorhynchus. So very, very interesting environment these guys would have lived in. So let's let these guys walk off and do their thing. And I'm just going to finish off this video here. So really great job. Sweetener did a really great job with this Ambers of Africa patch that he made. Really, really awesome and cool to see some animals like themed around different habitats and things like that, different continents, habitats. I think it really makes for interesting themes and cool themed videos and things like that. So, yeah, I think this will be a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.